enabled me to serve in different aspects. In the different aspects, when I say, I mean that with the different subjects, I'm able to minister over here. I remember in the very first time when I came to teach in EOPS, the subject which was assigned for me was the angelology, and I guess that you knows what is angelology. It's about the doctrine of angels. After that, uh, which theological subject I have taught, I don't remember, but I remember teaching about Elijah, the book of James, and then the last time or in the last session this year itself, I have dealt with the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel was a challenging subject for me, and at the same time, it was an eye-opening subject for me. But today, we are going to deal with the book of Jonah. And while I was sitting to prepare for Jonah, or while I was asking brother, the responsible brother, uh, about what to teach, as I have given him few subjects that I can deal with this and this and this. So he asked me, "Can you please deal with the book of Jonah?" After saying yes to him, and I started thinking, the people who are going to listen to me, they might heard all the lessons or from all the perspective they might have listened about Jonah. Uh, they know they might be knowing much more better than me. So what I'm going to do over here? So that was the question in my heart, and it was a prayer from me. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to give any new kind of information from the book of Jonah. I maybe fail in that. But what we are going to do in these 3 or 4 sessions, we are going to revise or review what all we have learned from all of our lifetime about the book of Jonah. But before getting into the book of Jonah, let me introduce about another person. He was born in a place called New York, US, right? His father was a psychiatrist, and his mother earned a degree in medicine. This child was so good that by the age of 1.5, he was able to read. At the age of 3, his father taught him Greek. By the age of 6, he spoke 7 different languages. At the age of 8, he got into a college by passing or by clearing an entrance exam. At the age of 9, he got into Harvard University, one of the toughest university in the world. But they judged him as a very young person to enter into this college, so they made him to wait until he turns 11. So at the age 16, he got graduated from Harvard, and his IQ was considered as the most, or his IQ was like 215, between 250 to 300. That was like the most
Okay.
numbered or was most talented person's IQ. Remember, Albert Einstein only had 200, but this person had 200, in between 250 and 300. He was so brilliant that he can conquer any language within 24 hours of a day. He died by the age of 46. But you know what he was doing while he was dying? He was doing some menial jobs in New York. He wasted his whole talent. He wasted his whole life. He was doing some normal type of job, and he left the world. He had the opportunities. He had many opportunities where he can showcase his talent, but he refused. He refused his responsibility. He was not at all willing to accept the responsibility. So he turned great opportunities also into waste. His name is William J. Sidis. You might be knowing about this person. I believe you might have heard about this person. If you doesn't know, it's not a big deal because William James Sidis, he wanted a life like that where he don't want to take any responsibility, where he don't want to take accept any type of any great opportunity. So he laid down his life in that manner. He wanted to hide himself. He wanted to go away unknown. He do not wanted to accept any kind of responsibility. So like our character, so like our person about whom we are going to deal today, Jonah. Jonah is something in that perspective. Jonah doesn't want to take any kind of responsibility which God wanted to God wanted him to do. Anyways, before coming into the book of Jonah, before going to deal with the character Jonah, I wanted to read for you a verse. From there, we are going to get into the book of Jonah. This verse is not from the book of Jonah, but we are going to read it from Second Kings chapter number 14, verse
Okay.
number 25. Second
Okay.
Kings chapter 14, verse number 25. He restored the border of Israel from the entrance of Hamath as far as the sea of Arabah, according to the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, which he spoke through his servant Jonah, the son of Amittai, the prophet, who was of Geth Hepher. Now, as I told you, most people are so familiar with this story. You might be knowing that this is the only verse apart from the book of Jonah, in which the whole Old Testament speaks about this prophet. But when it comes to the book of Jonah, what does this book reminds us? This book is going to remind us God's continual grace and mercy upon his prophet and upon the people, upon his prophet and upon his people. We may be saying only the Jewish people are his people, but he is stating that even the Gentiles are his people. But getting into that portion, before getting into that portion, I want you to come across about few of the introductory materials through which we can easily understand the book of Jonah in the coming days. So we are going to ask few of the questions. Where are we now? And for this reason, I have read Second Kings chapter 14, verse 25. Second Kings chapter 14, verse 25 says, this is the time of Jeroboam too. Did you come across that verse? It is there in verse number 20, 23 and 21, 24 also. But let me read verse number 24. I have read 25, but now I'm going to read verse number 24. He did, who did? Jeroboam did evil in the sight of the Lord. He did not depart from all the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, which he made Israel sin. Did you not note down that verse? Jeroboam too is in the reigning position, and about him, God is having a standard to say. What is the standard to say? Jeroboam two or Jeroboam second, he's no more than better, or he's not better than the first Jeroboam. Who's that first Jeroboam? You might be knowing that after Saul, after David, after Solomon, there comes a division in the land. And God divided 12 tribe Israel into 10 tribe Israel and 2 tribe Judah. And this 10 tribe Israel God has given to a king called Jeroboam. This Jeroboam, in the fear that his nation, his people, if they will go to Jerusalem and worship, if they will go to the temple of God and worship, maybe their heart can go away from my rule, my kingship, and they can turn against me, against my children, and my rulership, my lineage will not be sitting in the kingdom. Or sorry, in the kingship. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make an altar over here. I'm going to make a I'm going to put a idol over here so that my people, the 10 tribe Israel, they don't have to go to Jerusalem. They don't have to worship over there. They will worship over here. So what will happen? My people will not go away from my children's rulership. But what happens, Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, he comes and he goes. His son Baasha comes and go. I guess it's Baasha, or is his name Nadab? I guess it's Baasha. Baasha comes and goes. Then the family changes. God changes the family. Jeroboam's most fear was his lineage will not be getting the position of kingship if these 10 tribe people goes to worship over there in Jerusalem. So he put the idol over here so that they don't have to go over there, so that their heart will not be there in the land of Judah. Now, God is bringing up that Jeroboam, and he's bringing up this ruler Jeroboam too, and he's putting into the standard and saying that he's not better than this Jeroboam too is not better than the first Jeroboam. So at this point of time, where God says in verse number 2 very clearly, he did evil in the sight of the Lord, and he's bringing up another name whenever someone does or someone does any kind of injustice, God is going to bring prophet. So that is God's way of dealing with the Israelite people. You might be knowing who the prophets are and what are their responsibilities. Prophets were the voice of Israel's conscience. Am I right? Let me repeat that sentence. The prophets in the Old Testament, they were the voice of Israel's conscience. You remember when David did a big mistake and he wiped off his face and he thought that no one is going to find me. In 1 Samuel chapters 12 and 13, he did a great mistake. And then he wiped his face and he thought that no one is going to come across this. But then God sends a prophet called Nathan, and God makes him realize that you have done a very big mistake. So the prophets were the voice of Israel's conscience. And at the same time, prophets were having another responsibility. First, they were the voice of the Israel's conscience, and second, they were responsible enough to comfort the afflicted. Comfort the afflicted, as Elijah is comforting that widow. But there is another task, and that task was to afflict the comfortable. Comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. Comfortable in the sense that Ahab or this person Jeroboam too, they were all very much comfortable or comforted by doing all kind of wicked things. But God is witnessing all the evil. He's not going to send you away. He's going to afflict you. So God is bringing up another prophet. And verse number 25 says that according to the word of the Lord, I'm reading it from between or from the middle of the verse, to the word of the Lord, the God of Israel, which he spoke through his servant Jonah. So what Jonah is doing over here, Jonah is performing the Lord's task. The Lord's task in the sense, he is in between the king and in between the Lord, and he as a microphone, he as a speaker, he is presenting God, and he is telling unto the king what you are supposed to do, what you are not supposed to do. Are you getting the point? So where are we now? Jonah is doing a great ministry over there in Israel, in the 10 tribe Israel. Jonah is not the alone person who is doing who's doing ministry over there. Beside Jonah, there was Hosea doing his ministry over there. Amos is doing his ministry over there. All of these people were the contemporary to the person called Jonah. You got the point? Jonah, Hosea, and Amos, these three were the contemporaries. And one more thing, keep this in mind. Jonah is coming after a few big names in the prophets list. From Israel, from these 10 tribes called Israel, during the rulership of Ahab, there was a prophet. His name I have already mentioned. His name was Elijah. After Elijah, there comes another prophet. Who? It was Elisha. Elijah, Elisha, can you see the big names over there in the prophets list? If Elijah did 10 miracles, then Elisha did double of it. And here comes the another prophet. After a few kings or after a gap or in the span of few years, this Jonah is coming as a prophet. So the Israel people were enjoying the prophetical ministry of different great servants of God. Elijah, Elisha, now Hosea, almost along with him, along with them, here comes Jonah. So Jonah is doing a great ministry over there. But Jonah, but Jonah doesn't like and another fact which we read in Jonah chapter 1 that he don't want to go from his native place to another place. We'll read it over there, but let me complete this introductory part. So there is an important question. Uh, Jonah doesn't want to go. Jonah's background is very clear to us. But who wrote the book of Jonah? I personally think that it's Jonah himself who has written this book, and there is a reason for this answer. Because when we read the book of Jonah, it's very easy to read the book of Jonah. By the way, you know why? If you got 5 to 10 minutes, and if you really commit that 5 to 10 minutes with the book of Jonah from chapter number 1 to chapter number 4, you can finish that quick. Okay, it's very quick to we can very quickly read the book of Jonah. And when we read the book of Jonah, we will understand that there are a lot of materials that are written in first or in the first person. Okay, someone either told immediately what all happened to someone. I mean, this Jonah, to someone he has told very immediately, or soon thereafter he might have written everything. That might be the reason why we can see everything in the first hand material. So most probably it's Jonah himself who must have written. Otherwise, someone to whom to whom he has very immediately told, they might have recorded all of this book. Anyways, I believe that it can be Jonah or it can be someone else. It's not very clear from the book of Jonah who has written it, but from the book of Jonah, this first-hand material gives us a hint that it's Jonah himself. Now, there's another question. What type of literature it is? We generally call we generally include this book in the minor prophetical books. Now, you might be knowing how to divide the Old Testament. The first 17 books, we call it as historical books, even though in that 17 books, we call the first 5 books as the book of law. Still, including the book of law, that means including the 5 books of Moses, we call from Genesis to Esther as 17 historical books. Then from there, from Job, Psalms, Job, Ecclesiastes, and Song of Songs, we call that 5 books as poetical books. From there, from Isaiah to Malachi, then we call all of those books as prophetical books. But in that prophetical books itself, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Lamentation, Ezekiel, Daniel, these 5 books, we call them in a special manner or in a special way as major prophetical books. But there comes another set of 12 books, which we call as minor prophetical books. It's not minor in the sense that the theme or the message or the person is minor. Keep this in mind that if we make a count of all the chapters which these 12 books are having, it will be like 67 chapters. Okay, so all the 12 minor prophetical books can be comprised or compresses of 67 chapters. And we know that the book of Isaiah alone has 66 chapters. So Isaiah is considered as major prophetical book. Why? Because in the chapter wise, in the length wise, it is having huge number. But why
Still
we
seven.
consider those other books as minor prophetical books? Only the reason is those books were having a few chapters in number, not because of their themes, not because of their persons who have written this book. We call it as minor, but because of the length, we call it as minor. I think that is very much clear to all of us. I don't want to make more stress on that factor, but apart from calling it as minor prophetical book, I want to call this as a historical narrative. Historical narrative, what does that mean? Historical narrative means it is a recorded story, and at the same time this recorded story is having a purpose. It is presented in a way on purpose. Okay, it's a recorded story. At the same time, this is having a very big purpose to present. From the type of literature, we have to go to ways of approach, or which is the correct approach. Now, what do we mean by approach? Do you know that everyone does not believe upon the story of Jonah? For some, this is a legendary fiction. And I know that you might be knowing the word fiction. It's an ancient fiction, a fiction, or it's an ancient story. That's what many people believes. It's a like a real nice story for children, but those people do not consider this as a historical book. For some, they consider this as a parable. Parable in order to show into the world as an example that God is really merciful to the world, to the Gentile nation. It's like an example, parable. Then there are other people who consider this book as an allegory. What do we mean by allegory? The Jonah equals to Israel. Jonah represents Israel. Jonah was thrown into sea. So sea is representing all the nations. And Israel's mission is to go into the whole world and to preach God's kindness, God's mercy, and to bring the people into repentance. So this whole book is outlined in that mission manner. That's what some people say. So it's an allegory. Okay. So they do not consider it as an historical. But I believe this book is a historical book. And why I believe it so? Because even in Matthew chapter 12, verse 38, Jesus, looking unto the scribes and the Pharisees, he said an answer. And his answer was, when Pharisees and scribes were asking for sign, teacher, we want to see a sign from you. So Jesus answered and said to them, an evil and adulterous generation craves a sign, and yet no sign shall be given to it but the sign of Jonah, the prophet. So here, Jesus is telling about Jonah the prophet, and then a few verse down in Matthew chapter 12, let me read that verse more, where Jesus is pointing out his death along with or
Yeah,
by
okay.
pointing out the Jonah's example. Where do we read over there? Verse number 40. For just as Jonah was three
Jonah
days
was
and three
3
nights in
days.
the belly of the sea monster, so will the Son of Man be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. Did you hear that? So here Jesus Christ is hinging the fact of the resurrection on the fact of the Jonah's experience. Okay, so if Jesus is pointing out Jonah as the prophet, if Jesus is hinging the fact of his resurrection on the fact of Jonah's experience, then that means Jonah is a historical person. Even if you read verse number 41, there also we can see that he is quoting about the Queen of South, the Queen of Sheba, who has
Okay.
come to see
Yes.
Solomon's wisdom. So Jonah was a historical person. He was also an historical person. In that way, we can understand that Jonah is not a legendary fiction, parable, allegory, or something that way the people fashions it up. It's a historical book. And now the next question is, so I think that you all got the fact, or you all got that idea which approach is the right approach. Now Now there comes another question. Why am I doing this? Why am I on this class? Why am I learning this book called Jonah? If we read carefully this book of Jonah, we can understand a lot of things. What are things we can understand? Do the will of God. Do
But
not
Linda,
go where the will of God is not there. Otherwise, you will be
Linda,
going down to the sea.
Master,
Otherwise, you will be thrown down to the sea. You will be having all kind of troubles and all kind of tribulations. But what actually the Jonah book of Jonah wants to teach us? The book
salvation
which
belongs to the Lord.
this book is getting a having a very big question. This book is getting closed. So why? Yeah, thank you. So why we are dealing this? Why I have to learn this book? In fact, while this writer is writing for the Israelites or for the audience, Jonah might be writing this, or someone very related to him might be writing this. When he was writing this book, he wanted the people who are hearing, or the audience who are hearing his words, they have to check their own heart in standard with God's heart. So once on the one side, it's the heart of the people, and on the other side is the heart of God. Can you see the heart of God? And can you evaluate yourself? Where are you standing? Jonah was if they are progressing or retreating in their spiritual development. So I want to construct that as the title for this whole book, and I want to treat this book with that title. And I have constructed that statement like this: how we are doing against God's standards. In the beginning itself, I have told you, on the one side, God has shown Jeroboam 2 with the standard of Jeroboam 1 and said that he's not better than Jeroboam 1. But here we we are going to deal with how we are according to God's standard. Getting the point? So it's more like a spiritual. In the Bible colleges, we call it as a spiritual. What do we say? Spiritual conference? Yeah, spiritual conference. We used to have the spiritual conference always on the beginnings of our college days. Uh, so while we are going to deal with the book of Jonah, we are going to have a SLC, Spiritual Life Conference, where we're going to deal with our own life and we are going to evaluate our own life. Where are we standing in the standards or against the standard, against the God's standards? Before going to deal with that, we have to do one more thing. We have to outline this book. Okay. And we are going to do that. How this book is divided. Now, you might be knowing a lot of outlines for this book of Jonah, and I don't want to hint on that. According for our studies or for our memorization, I want to bring up one very easy outline in which we can outline this book as Jonah running away from God. That's in chapter number 1. In chapter number 2, he's running back to God by praying unto God. He's coming back to God that he wanted to come with along with God. But in chapter number 3, by doing God's wish or will, by going to Nineveh, by going to Nineveh, he's running with God. And then on the last chapter, chapter number 4, he's asking God the question, why are you not destroying the Ninevites? Okay. He wanted to kill the Ninevites, or he wanted to see the destruction of Ninevites, but God was very gracious. He restricted himself. He showed mercy upon the Ninevites. So he was having question, why are you not destroying them? I know that you will do all of these things. He's running ahead of God. So 4 chapters running away from God. So I have given 4 arrows running away from God. If we comes to Jonah chapter number 1, A lot of time we will be able to see he goes down, down, down. He goes down from the will of God by going down to Joppa, by going down to the ship, and then he is going down to the sea. So I have given the down arrow. He's running back to God by looking up. When? When he was in the stomach of that big fish. Then in the chapter number 3, he's running with God. Okay, he's doing the will of God by saying 8 words sermon. We'll go or we'll deal with that when we comes across this chapter number 3. Okay, so in chapter number 3, he's doing the will of God, but in chapter number 4, he's running ahead of God by showing his great displeasure of God not destroying that land. But that's for your understanding, the basic understanding which you should have, or I guess that which all of you have. Okay. But if we see this prophet, he's a very prodigal prophet by not obeying God. He's a praying prophet. He's a preaching prophet. And in the last section, we are going to see his pouting prophet or pouting face. Okay, and according to a geographical manner. In chapter number 1, he was in Israel. In chapter number 2, he's going to be inside the fish. In chapter number 3, he will be going to Nineveh. That means he will be in Nineveh. And in chapter number 4, he'll come out of the Nineveh and he's going to pout his face unto God. That means he'll be outside of Nineveh. So geographically, he's inside, in Nineveh, and outside Nineveh. Okay, with that, I'm concluding the introductory materials, which is very essential for our basic understanding when we are dealing with this book called Jonah. Okay. I'm not going to deal with a lot of things today. God willing, we have 3 more classes and we'll be dealing with the book of Jonah. But today, we are going to deal with the first 3 verses of Jonah. Jonah chapter number 1, verse 1, 2, and 3 is what we are going to deal. Tomorrow, if God helps us, we'll be dealing with the other or the remaining portion. However, let me come to Jonah chapter 1 by saying a story. This story is about a man who was lost in a desert. Okay, we can assume that he lost in the desert. All what he was having was a candle, the matchstick, and few dates. So on the first evening or the first night, he lit the candle, and on that very dark place, he lit the candle and he kept that candle over there, and he took the dates which he was having to eat. He took the first date, he opened the date, and he saw a squirming worm inside that. So he threw the first date. He took the second date and he opened that date also. It got another worm. He threw that. Third, fourth, fifth, all of that got worms inside. Now what he did is he blew off that candle and gulped all of the date which he was having. Most of the time we assume that if we are closing our eyes, if we are not praying, if we do not want, if we do not listen, if we do not read, what is that God wants to speak unto me? God will not speak unto me, and I can do whatever I wish to do. Here is another man who knows how to listen to God, but still he disobeys. Is there consequence for that? For both, there are consequences. Let me say, as a child of God, as a saved person, we cannot omit God's decisions in our life. We cannot keep aside God and can live our life. With that, let me read Jonah chapter 1 and verse number 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying. So I'm going to break this chapter number 1, into 3 portions, and I'm going to name each of the pericope like Jonah is disobedient, is verse number 1 to 3. Jonah was discovered by the ship people. That's in verse number 4 through 14. And from verse number 15 through 17, he's discarded. He's not discarded by God, he's discarded by the sailors. Did you understand that point? The last portion, I have written discarded, but he was not discarded by God. Sailors discarded him from the ship for that great storm to get calm. However, the first portion, disobedience, verse number 1, 2, 3. As I have told you, in the days of Jonah, in the northern kingdom of Israel, that 10 tribe Israel was experiencing a political success. Did you note that? God was giving them a land expansion under Jeroboam too. But at the same time, he was leading God's people toward spiritual bankruptcy, like Jeroboam the one first did. So Amos, the contemporary of Jonah, was preaching against them, against their materialistic culture. Okay. However, instead of instructing his own people, Jonah was asked by God to go to Nineveh and to preach against it. So here are three verbs which God is going to use in verse number 2. What are those verbs? Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, and cry against it. Did you got that verb? The three actions which God wanted Jonah to do: arise, go, and cry against it. In short, that was the summarization of God's will for Jonah's life. It is his great commission. God is giving his prophet the direction to go. And the interesting thing is that God calls this prophet to go to Nineveh, one of the great cities of the ancient world. If you note down, in verse number 2, it is called great city. Then, if you come to verse chapter number 3, two times it is said great city. In my Bible, it's a NASB version. In chapter number 3, on one side it is written great city, and on the other verse it's written exceedingly great city. And then in chapter number 4, once again, God asks or God says, great city. To a very great city, God asked Jonah to go. And it's located like 500 miles from the place where now Jonah is, apart land. And he told that I'll not go over there. Rather, I'll go to another place. I'll come to that. I'll come to that, to which place he'll go. Even though you knows that place, I'll come to the geographical section right now. But before coming to that, why he doesn't want to go to Assyria? In verse number 2 itself, it is written that, for their wickedness has come up before me. What are their wickedness? The Assyrians. Okay, now who is this Assyria? And I'm going to tell you that this Assyria, this country called Assyria, got a capital, and that capital is this Nineveh. Like India got the capital, Delhi is the capital of India. Likewise, Nineveh is the capital of, or Nineveh was the capital of Assyrian kingdom. So these Assyrian people were famous for their brutality, exploitation, and violence. Ancient record bears the witness that their fearsome conquest of the other society was so tremendous that all the people fears Assyrians on a point of time. Okay, they boasted of committing detestable acts. Who? This Assyrian boast about themselves about committing detestable acts, like cutting their enemies' ears or the other body parts. Sometimes they skin the people alive and impale them outside the gates of their own cities as a sign of Assyrian might and power. They were also known for their witchcraft and sorcery. They were also known for their alcoholism. In addition to all of this, the prostitution, the illicit sexuality, there was no rule in that city. Okay, in whatever fashion they want to live their life, want to live, they can live it. Okay, so in the Old Testament era, the Assyrians was detested as an immoral or immoral culture. Okay, so we have to keep that in mind. That is the one of the reason why this Jonah doesn't want to go over there and to preach the his sermon, because he got a somewhat an idea that if he preach, the people will be showing up to his preaching and will be showing repentance, and God will forgive them. That is the biggest reason, one of the biggest reason why he doesn't want to go. So what I have told you, so I have told you that the Assyrians were a wicked, inhuman, depraved, cruel, degenerated, immoral people. Okay, but God purposed to do something about it. That's the most interesting and remarkable factor. When Ninevites were not at all interested in God, God was tremendously interested in this unbeliever's life. This is a great message which speaks to our own heart. God interested in these kind of people. So God wanted his child of God to go into that city and to preach. So he got a directly pointing message with a very specific message, okay, and in a very plain manner. Jonah, arise, go and cry. But he deliberately disobeyed. Now, now, can he disobey that? That's another question. Why, I want to make you notice few of the things from this verse number 1. Did you see in verse number 1, 3 times the word Lord is written in capital letters? Lord. Verse number 1 to 3, there are 3 times the word Lord is coming in caps. If you read chapter number 1, 2, 3, 4, at least I guess that there are 37 reference for the word Lord. The Lord is one of the major character over here. And here, why the word Lord is in capital letters? It's not a mistake. It was to show that while it was written in Hebrew, it was Yahweh, YHWH, Yahweh, Yehovah, the proper and personal name for God in the Old Testament. Is it important? Yes. The author wants all of the listeners to listen, or the audience to listen, that this word or this message is coming straight from Israel's God to Israel's prophet. That's why he deliberately uses the word Lord, or in Hebrews, he was using YHWH, Yahweh. Chapter number 1, at least 7 times that capital Lord is coming. Even if the author desires, still he cannot run away from Yahweh, the personal name of God. He commands and they should obey. But here, Jonah will not. Then comes another important factor. First thing, I have told you that the word Lord is coming in all caps. The second thing which we have to notice over here is the name Jonah itself. If we were to if we go to Israel today, even today, and if you are looking into some trees, and if we are calling out Jonah, Jonah, what people will think, people are thinking that there is Jonah, meaning there is a dog. There is a dog, because Jonah means dog. And the first readers or the audience, if they are reading this, Yahweh is telling Jonah, telling the dog to go, arise, go and cry. The dog must do it. You know why? Because in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew land, dogs were having such kind of connection with the Israelites. You remember in the early book of, or in the early chapters of Genesis, when Noah wanted a scouting expedition after that post fled, he sent. a dove. And he bought a simple what the flood or the water level got down. And when we comes to the book of Leviticus, that dove is becoming an acceptable sacrifice for God as a picture, as a peace picture, you know. So Jonah's very name meaning peace or sacrifice. Are you getting where this story is heading to? Jonah's name meaning a sacrifice or the peace. But the irony is, Jonah's life is anything but a picture of peace and sacrifice. So now think about the opening lines or opening three verses. He was supposed to hear Lord, Yahweh's voice, the personal name of God. He himself is talking unto this prophet to obey, but he disobeyed. He is speaking to Jonah, the one who is supposed to obey, because your name is having the weight, or your name carries the meaning of obedience or sacrifice. But he did nothing. So he chose to flee unto Tarshish. So I told you, I'll tell you about Tarshish. Tarshish, well, it's probably located somewhere in southern Spain, okay? 500 miles from where Jonah was right now was Nineveh. But 2,000 miles to the west was this place called Tarshish. 500 miles east to Israel was this a place called Nineveh. But 2,000 miles west is the place called Tarshish. And he chose west because God asked me to go to east. And there we read that verse number 3, he went down into it to go with them to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. Did you read that word? Down. He literally going down in his life. Whenever we deliberately disobey God, whenever we deliberately choose not to speak unto God, not to know about his will, we are deliberately going down and down and down in our life. Even though we may be having money in our hand to pay for this Tarshish, the ship, even be having a ship waiting for us alone. Maybe after Jonah, they might have gone or they might have left that port. However, you may be having money, you may be having all the materials, what all this world can provide, you might be having. But if you're not listening to the word of God, if you're not wanted to listen to the word of God, if you're deliberately disobeying, deliberately ignoring God and God's presence, you are deliberately going down and down and down. There is no argument for that. You know what? Later, he goes down to ship to sleep. From there, he goes down to sea to be caught by a great fish. Then that fish takes him down to the deepest of sea, down to Joppa, down to ship, down to sea, down to the deepest of sea. That is the cycle. Disobedience always leads to descent. I'm going to wrap up everything. Before wrapping up, I want to summarize this first class. Things are very bad in Israel. I've told you, even though they are having a lot of money, still they were going down. You got the fact? I want you to remember till we finish Jonah chapter 4. They were elaborating the land, or they were taking more and more space. They were accumulating the land. Yet it is written about Israel that they were doing evil in the sight of God. Here is another person of Israel who's supposed to speak unto God and who was speaking for God also. He was also doing the same thing. He deliberately sinned against God. His name was nowhere against the standard of God. So that was the question. That was the title which I have given for this whole book. Where are we against the God's standard? We bears the name of Christian, but are we hiding ourselves from God? Are we refusing the calling which God is giving unto us? Are we deliberately doing any kind of thing which God is asking us to do? Most of the time, what's our thinking or our what we have drawn, or we have a picture about God, and the picture I'll tell you in a story base. Once a junior high teacher, she brought a wonderful piece of art to her classroom, and that was a second standard classroom. And this teacher showed that beautiful drawing to the class, in which in the drawing a person was smiling. And this teacher told the children that a truly great painter can take a smiling face and turn into a frown with just one stroke of his brush. That means with one stroke, he can turn the smiling face into a frown face. One child, one boy was sitting in the last bench. He told his friend, that's nothing. My father can turn my smile into frown with just one look. Many of us might have experienced, or many of you might have given that experience to your next generation. We have turned a lot of smiles to frown by just one look. That's what our picture or our idea about our God in heaven. We think we think that God is there planning everything just to make my joy into, or my smiling face into a frown face. He doesn't care me. He don't want me to have any fun. You know, the last 1 week I was teaching Ecclesiastes, the book of Ecclesiastes. And when I was thinking about Ecclesiastes chapter number 3, where it is written the famous line, there is a time for sowing, there is a time to reap. Okay. Why? There is a time to sow, there is a time to reap. And then on the last few verses, it is written that God knows everything. He knows everything. Why He is doing? We, in a very big canvas, we only knew few of the thing. Okay. If God is the painter, He knows what to draw and where to draw in that canvas. We are just a very feeble people. Very feeble people, okay, who comes by this age or by this date and will go by another date. But God, from the beginning to the next end, He knows the full canvas, what to paint and where to paint. That's why me and you are sitting somewhere in the different parts of the world. Why? God knows what to paint from mine and from your life. But what we think, like Jonah, I don't want to go. I don't want to go to that great city. I want to be in my own land. I want to be a good person, a good prophet. When the people think of me, Elijah, Elisha, Jonah, we all have that last letter H. So we should come in that chronological order. I should be over here. I should be the next one. Elijah did 10 miracles, so Elisha 20, and I should do 40. I will not go to Nineveh. If he doesn't want me to do any kind of miracle, it's okay. I'll go and find a ship to Tarshish, and I'll be settled down in the bottom of that ship and I'll sleep. I don't want to do anything which God wants me to do if it is not according to my wish, or if it is not according to my decisions. If we are going like that, we are nowhere growing spiritually. People of faith are those people who develop spiritual maturity by constantly moving in the direction which God shows unto them. In other words, maturing people trust God by faith, regardless of the perceived difficulty. They live up to their name. Whatever happens, we live up to our name, Christian. Jonah was not living up to his name. He was going away from God. He doesn't want to do because it was not according to his will, according to his purposes or the plan. May God help us. I only dealt with chapter number 1, verse 1, 2, and 3, where we have seen that against the God standard, we have some things to follow. In order to understand God, in order to understand his directions, we should have a relationship with him. Jonah was having a relationship with God at least. Are we having? We should have. May God help us. In this first class, we have seen some background materials of the book of Jonah and also the first 3 verses of the book of Jonah. If God helps us, we will be dealing the rest of the part on the next day and on the following week. May God's name be glorified. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. God bless you to have this wonderful class, especially from the book of Jonah, the introduction. If God allows and tarries, tomorrow and in the days to week, uh, we will continue with the same subject. Until then, let the Lord keep us safe in our respective places. And let's continue praying for Brother Emmanuel Abraham and his ministries over in his place. Let's remember each one of us attending this class. Of course, we